left-wing extremism, Naxalism and Maoism and its impact on India's national security. In this part of the presentation, we'll speak about the spread of Naxalism in India and how it's impacting the internal security environment. I had mentioned to you in the earlier part of my presentation that we fought 4 wars with Pakistan. First one in 47-48, second one in 65, third one in 1971 and the last one, Kargil War, in 1999. After fighting the 71 war, Pakistan realized that it was not possible to beat India in a conventional war. Therefore, they changed the type of a war that they were fighting with India. They started off a new kind of a war which they called as Operation Topaz or Operation Karakoram II. This was a new war in the sense that in this war, Pakistan started infiltrating terrorists into our country with arms and ammunition and started creating unrest in various parts of the country. In a conventional war fought earlier, it was only the armed forces of Pakistan and India which fought with each other, and common man inside the country was hardly concerned with it. But in this type of a war, which is presently going on, the common citizens of India are being attacked by Pakistan in a very deliberate manner. There are 4 major dangers which India faces, and these dangers are: first is Naxalism, which is today prevalent in nearly 35 to 40% of the country. Second part is the demographic invasion of Northeast, especially of Assam and West Bengal, which is converting these 2 states into Bangladesh. Third part is the present proxy war which is still going on in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the fourth challenge is bomb blast and terrorist attacks which are taking place in the rest of the country. We may add a 5th one, that is radicalization of society and communal riots which take place very frequently in this country. Are all these internal problems separate? Do they fight on a separate ideology? Are they connected with each other? The answer is all of them are linked up to each other, and it is basically a war on what is called as the idea of India. It is Pakistan's intelligence agency ISI which is controlling and coordinating this kind of a warfare. We started having first set of our problems in the 80s and 90s when we had terrorism going on in Punjab, which was tackled very well by the Indian Army and Punjab Police. Thereafter we started having problems in Kashmir. Thereafter the demographic invasion of Northeast started off in a big way, and Naxalism or left-wing extremism also rose in an exponential manner in the late 90s. Pakistan's intelligence agency ISI has 2 or 3 very important principles which it follows. First principle is that governments may change, but ISI will never change its policy of bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. Indian politicians or Indian rulers fall prey to a lot of ideas that we can have peace with Pakistan. In 1947-48, Indian Army had almost captured half of Kashmir, half of Pakistani occupied Kashmir, and we had reached up to a place called Muzaffarabad, which is the capital of Pak occupied Kashmir. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru called the Indian Army back and gave away that part to Pakistan in the hope that because of this good gesture, India and Pakistan will become friends. It did not happen. Same thing happened in 1965 when Lal Bahadur Shastri gave away Hajipir Pass, which was captured by the Indian Army at Tashkent, because he was under the impression that giving away Hajipir Pass will ensure that Pakistan becomes your friend permanently. He was also proved wrong. In fact, Swatantra Veer Savarkar there had warned that Lal Bahadur Shastri should not go for the Tashkent agreement at all, but this Vice Council was not followed. Same thing happened in 1971. Mrs. Indira Gandhi provided an excellent leadership as far as the war was concerned. we captured 94,000 prisoners. But in the hope that we can become friends with Pakistan, Mrs. Indira Gandhi returned 94,000 prisoners in Simla. The result is still the same. In fact, she herself was a victim of the extreme measures which Pakistan took later when she was killed by the Punjab terrorists, who were also her bodyguards. Similarly, in 1999, Atal Bihari Vajpayee also thought we could have peace with Pakistan. He went to Lahore, sang a beautiful poem there called Pakistan Bharat Padosi Saath Saath Rehna Hai. While the poem was very good, while he was doing all the talks with Pakistan, it was exactly at the same juncture when Pakistan was infiltrating into Kargil. Today's leadership of Dr. Manmohan Singh has also fallen in the same prey. After Nawaz Sharif came to the power, Dr. Manmohan Singh thought that we could have peace with Pakistan, and we started our peace talks with Pakistan. And the result is 2013 has been one of the bloodiest years as far as internal security situation is concerned. How many people are dying in these problems created by internal security? On an average, 2 to 2,500 Indians are getting killed because of problems related to India's internal security. If you analyze this destruction cause-wise, then you will realize that maximum number of people are being killed in Naxalism. Northeast India and Kashmir comes on second and third position, and terrorism or the bomb blasts which are taking place in the other parts of the country comes at number 4 position always. On an average, 10 to 15,000 Indians are getting severely injured every year, and this has been happening right from 1984 onwards. By one estimate, number of Indians killed because of this proxy war launched by Pakistan is more than 70,000 Indians. The number of people seriously injured is more than 2.5 to 3 lakhs. So this tells you as to how destructive this war has been and how successful Pakistan has been of bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. Left-wing extremism or Naxalism is also one of the components of Pakistan's war launched on India. If you look at the history of Naxalism, this word Naxalism starts from a district of Naxalbari, which is there in West Bengal. In 1967-68, Charu Muzumdar and Kanu Sandhyan had the first set of farmers who rose against those landlords there and formed what was called as Naxalites. Immediately after the 71 war, Mrs. Indira Gandhi utilized the help of Indian Army and crushed this movement militarily. Almost 5 to 6 divisions or almost about 50 to 60,000 Indian Army troops were used to crush Naxalism. After that, Naxalism was lying on a low key. From 1972 to almost till 1984, it was on a very low key. Thereafter, the Naxalism started off for different reasons in different parts of the country. The reasons were different for Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa and Chhattisgarh. We will look at them one by one. What is more important is that year 2004 is very important in the history of Naxalism because all the left-wing extremist organizations came together and formed a party called Communist Party of India Marxist. And this is how CPIM was born, and this is what today's name is not Naxalism, or today's name for them is not really left-wing extremism, but their actual name now is Maoism. And CPI Maoist, this party has been banned by Government of India. (2004) 21st September 2004 is a very important year in the history of Naxalism because 37 left-wing extremist groups got together and what is called as the Communist Party of India Marxist. Thereafter, the strength of this group is increased tremendously. Basically, the People's War Group, which was the most powerful group in South India, and Maoist Control Center, which was the most powerful group in North India, came together along with the smaller groups. In this particular slide, you see a lot of activities which were done during this merger ceremony. You have the passing out parade of the Maoists who passed out. You have a wreath laying ceremony on extreme left bottom in which they are laying wreath. Then you have the flag hosting ceremony. In addition to this, you also have a seminar on what do they want to achieve in Maoism. These are various pictures of Nakshals of the Maoist guerrillas in the jungles of central India. The Nakshal foot soldiers are basically Adivasis who are residing in this area. The Maoists have been causing a lot of damage to the Government of India's property and private property. It is estimated that anything up to 10 to 15,000 crores of property of Government of India is destroyed by them every year. They are railway stations, police stations, TV towers, communication towers, schools, offices, etc. In addition to this, the Maoists possess a very large amount of explosives. They have been using explosives to blow up vehicles of the security forces. In this slide, you see a vehicle called Casper, which was blown up by the Maoists. This is supposed to be a bulletproof vehicle which can withstand almost 8 to 10 kg of explosive impact. But this vehicle was blown up and the CRPF jawans who were traveling in this were killed. Obviously, the amount of explosive used here was almost about 40 to 50 kgs. It may interest you to know that last blast which took place on Jangli Maharaj Road in Pune, in those 6 blasts which took place there, the amount of explosive put together was less than 2 kg. While here they used almost about 10 times more explosive for blowing up this vehicle. Naxalism is basically today taking place in central part of India, which is also full of mines, and the Indian mining industry uses explosives for mining. So therefore it is very easy to get hold of explosives, and this is used as a big weapon by the Nakshals. They have been killing certain leadership also. This is one picture of Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who was the then Chief Minister of Assam, Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, whose vehicle was blown up. Mr. Chandrababu Naidu used to say that Maoists are the people who are our brothers and we should have negotiations with them. After his vehicle was blown up, he stopped all negotiations and he raised a force called, I'm forgetting the name now, he raised a commando force called Greyhound. After his own vehicle was hit, he raised a force of commandos called Greyhound, and today Greyhound has been extremely successful in operation against the Nakshals. So therefore, the bottom line is when average civilians get killed, nobody is bothered, but when leadership gets killed, you certainly think that it is very important and policies are changed. Very recently, last year, just before the Chhattisgarh elections, the entire Congress leadership of Chhattisgarh, including Mr. V.C. Shukla and the Salvajudam leader Mahendra Kumar Karma, who was killed. And it was at this point of time that the Congress president said that it was an attack on the Indian democracy, as if it was not an attack till the time normal civilians were getting killed. So that is the bottom line. VIP is getting killed, you change policies. Jharkhand Mukti Morcha's MP, Mr. Sunil Mahato, was killed. This is his photograph. The Maoists have all kinds of weapons, including rifles, light machine guns, rocket launchers. They are also indigenously manufacturing it. They are getting their weapons from the Southeast Asian arms merchant. They are getting weapons from the insurgent groups based in the Northeast. They are getting weapons from jihadi terrorists. So there is no dearth of arms, ammunition and weapons. These are the bulletproof morchas which the Maoists have been using to protect themselves. This is one document recovered from them which shows the plan of attack which they had made to attack the CRPF post. There is not adequate time to explain the entire document, but it is good enough to understand that their planning is as good as military planning, meaning they are very well trained. Now, very briefly, when you talk about Maoism, what is happening today is that this movement is spread almost in 35 to 40% of Indian landmass, and this slide shows what is called as the Red Corridor, and it literally divides India into two halves. It starts off from Pashupati in Nepal and extends up to Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. If you look at this Red Corridor, if you have to carry out a movement by railway, let us say from Mumbai to Calcutta, the trains do not run in Naxal affected areas at night time. So literally the movement from east to west of Indian subcontinent is stopped, and the movement takes place only during daytime. This is the map of the states affected by left-wing extremists or Maoists. States which have been shown in red are the ones where almost 80 to 90% of districts are affected. The ones shown in pink come thereafter, and the least affected have been shown thereafter. If you see, all these states are basically located in central part of the country, meaning they are away from Pakistan and from China border. So, and this is also an area which is full of forest. So Maoism today is an insurgency which is based in the central part of the country. There is a lot of relationship between the Maoists and the tribals. Central part of the country is also called as Dandakaranya. It is place where almost 85% of India's tribal population is located here. And this tribal population, traditionally, no development has taken place in this area. The people in this area can be classified as being one of the poorest in our country, and the forest cover in this area is also very, very thick. So therefore, Maoism is linked up to the forest and to the Adivasis or the tribals who are located in this area. Now, how did Maoism start off? If you have to look at the entire history, it will take too long a time. But very shortly, 1967, the movement started off in the Naxalbari district of West Bengal. 70-71, the movement was crushed with the help of Indian Army by the then Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi. 72 to 88 was a period of low activity. Somewhere around 84, 85, 87 onwards, the movement again started becoming big. In fact, if you look at the history of internal security situation in the country, you will realize that the period between 84 to 88 was a period in which Pakistan and ISI and China activated the problems of internal security in our country. If you recall, 1984 was the time when Operation Blue Star took place in Punjab. 1984 was also the time where subversion started off in a very big way in Kashmir, and Kashmir actually exploded sometime in 87-88. This was also the time when Naxalism suddenly from a low key went into a high curve, and this is also a time when the demographic invasion of Northeast also started off after a prolonged time in a very, very big way. The causes as to why Naxalism spread is different. It is shown on the slide. The reasons in Bihar are different from that in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, and they are also different in Orissa, UP and Andhra Pradesh. What is to be understood is that the fault lines shown on the slide are existing in our country. There is no doubt on that issue. But it is the ISI and Pakistan which is aiding and abetting various fault lines and magnifying them so as to convert it into an anti-national movement in our country. And as I mentioned earlier, 2004 is the most important year in the history of Maoism, in which all the groups came together and formed what is called as the CPI Maoist Party. What are the reasons? Why did the movement start? The reasons are have been shown on this slide. Basically, ideology of communism, which looked attractive at a point of time. Land reforms were taking place very, very slowly. Infrastructural development in terms of roads and railways was also very slow. social and economic disparities were very prominent at this point of time, and of course the most important problems were economic deprivation and unemployment. If you remove these two causes, almost 70 to 80% of Maoism can be stopped. What are the factors which have sustained this movement? They have been shown that the reasons are that the people who have been wronged, or call it marginalized, the base is quite large. There is inadequate governance today in our country. The terrain is favorable, meaning it's a jungle area, underdeveloped area in which no development takes place. Arms and ammunition are very easily available. There is no judicial system which exists in this part. So if tribals have a problem, there is no way but to go to the Maoist only. Financial powers today are mostly with big industries, with big farmers and all. It doesn't reach the common man. So therefore, the result is the movement continues to spread. Statistically, if you look at as to how serious is the extent of this left-wing extremism of Maoism, it is shown here that 16 states out of 33 have been affected by this Maoism. If you look at the districts, 232 districts out of 604 in the country. If you look at the number of police stations, it is nearly 1,611 stations which have been affected out of 12,000 police stations which are there. And if you talk in terms of landmass, it is 35% to 40% of landmass which is affected. And on an average, 16 to 17,000 violent incidences take place every year, in which 750 to 1,000 people get killed. The four states which are mostly affected by these problems are Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Orissa and Andhra Pradesh. They are the most affected states in which 80% of violence takes place. Now the cadre, the tribe, basically the cadre consists of tribal people. The foot soldiers are all tribals. They are in a group of 15 to 25 years of age. They are not completely, they are not educated, and they mostly come from the tribal belt. They are poor, undernourished, etc. They have a strong tradition of tribal ethos, and they always feel threatened by the outsiders which come there. The strength of underground elements which are armed, it is estimated that the number may be anything between 10,000 to 15,000. They have a secondary force which supports the armed cadre. The strength estimated may be between 15 to 20,000 again. And then there are overground workers which are there in small cities and big cities, that again number may be anything between 50,000 to 1 lakh. The leadership of the Dalams, Dalam is the basic fighting unit which is there, consists of people who are in the age group of 25 to 35. They are more educated. They are generally plainsmen from the states of Bengal, Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. While the Politburo members, the top leadership, consists of people who are between 50 to 60 years of age with a communist background. But they all stay in cities, and none of the children of these Politburo members actually take part in Nakshal movement. They all have gone abroad and are studying abroad. So theoreticians do not send their children for fighting like Maoists in the jungles. One important thing is that there is no central leadership, there is no number one leader in Nakshal area, there is no charismatic leader. It has both good points and bad points. The leader who is supposed to be senior most is their secretary, Mr. Ganpati, who is supposed to be number one. But even his control is not as prominent, as good as it is supposed to be. These are all loosely splintered groups which are there. Now, as far as their organization is concerned, the tree is shown here. All that you need to understand out of this is that they are a highly organized lot. There are people for training, there are people for propaganda, there are people who are Dalam commanders, there are people who are administrators, there are people, various kinds of activities which are required to be taken. There are people who are earmarked for it, and they are very, very well organized. And all these areas which are affected, they are formed, their district bureaus and state bureaus and regional bureaus which are there, meaning that if you have to break this movement, you have to break their organizations. As far as terrain is concerned, too long. I am Brigadier Hemant Mahajan, who has put in nearly 37 years of service in the Indian Army. I was commissioned into 7th Maratha Light Infantry, one of the famous battalions of Indian Army, in June 1975. During my service, I have taken part on all the operations in which Indian Army participated from 1975 onwards. I have taken part on anti-terrorist operation in Jammu and Kashmir, anti-infiltration operations which Indian Army did again on the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. During the peak of terrorism in Punjab, we were involved in Operation Raksha in Punjab. In addition to this, I have served on the Rajasthan and the other Pakistani, Indo-Pakistan borders. I have served on the Indo-China borders, on the Indo-Myanmar borders, and we have taken part in various operations which took place, including serving in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. For all the action that we did in Kashmir, my battalion was awarded Unit Citation and about 19 gallantry awards. Again, when I was commanding a brigade in Jammu and Kashmir, again a lot of awards were won by my brigade. My last 4 years of my service in the Army, I joined Army War College, where I was teaching officers of the rank of colonels in the higher command course. After my retirement on 31st January 2009, I've been writing very regularly in various newspapers on various facets of national security, both in Marathi and in English. I've been taking part on various debates on the TV channels, in the Marathi TV channels, 24 hours news channels, Hindi TV channels, and also some of the English TV channels. In addition to this, we are taking part in many seminars based upon national security. I'm a member of 2 think tanks, Center for Advanced Strategic Studies based in Pune and Forum for Integrated National Security, which is based in Bombay. One is involved in talking on various facets of national security, on many talks which are coordinated by various NGOs. For my service in the Army, I was awarded Yuddha Seva Medal for the good work that I had done, a gallantry award in Kashmir. In addition, I have been awarded Chief of Army Staff's Commendation Card. Swatantra Veer Savarkar Rashtriya Smarak asked me to I am on the working committee of Swatantra Veer Savarkar Rashtriya Smarak, and on their behalf we have produced some films covering various facets of national security. The films include India's external security, that is how we should deal with China and Pakistan. Second is how should we deal with our borders during peacetime with Bangladesh, with Nepal, Myanmar and Sri Lanka. How should we look after the coastal security? We face serious internal security problems. We have covered 4 of these. These are the extent, the Naxalism in our country today is increasing exponentially. How do we counter the threat of Naxalism or Maoism? Kashmir proxy war is still going on. What else can we do in Kashmir? Northeast India is being converted into a Bangladesh. How do we meet the challenge of stopping Bangladeshization of Northeast? And how do we stop bomb blasts that are taking place in the rest of the country? All these films are in English. One film is in Marathi, in which we have spoken as to how do we take on the challenge of the Chinese dragon. In addition, there is one film on motivation. One young soldier, Lieutenant Vijayan Thapar, how he sacrificed his life. It's a film which will motivate the younger generation. I am sure that you will enjoy listening to these films, and you should pass it on to, you should pass on the contents of these videos to as many friends and relations as possible, so that the spirit of national security is imbibed by every citizen of the country. Jai Hind.